Hey everybody, Evan Savage here. I'm the pastor of Grassroots Church. Thank you for joining us by watching our messages from this past week or maybe weeks before. We are glad that you're taking time out of your week to learn, to engage with our church from an online point of view. We would love for you to join us on Sunday mornings for tangible community worship and of course some messages as well. And if that interests you, we would love for you to join us at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Thank you again, and I hope that this message is edifying to your spirit.
It is really good to see you guys again. Good morning. Samantha and I have not been to church in almost 3 months. Emery's never been to church. This is her first time at church. Yeah. So, Samantha gave birth to our first daughter 2.5 months ago. So that's context, if I haven't met you yet. Sorry. My name's also Aiden, if I haven't met you yet. It's been a while. I need to start by abusing this platform for a sec and saying thank you to all of you, first and foremost, for being our church in this place and in this time. Grassroots is the heartbeat of our lives. Not being here and not seeing you guys for 2.5 months was a very strong reminder of that. It was really hard to not be with you guys for so long. And we're really glad to be back for this week. But I also need to say thank you for the actual tangible things that you gave us. Biggest shout outs to Heather Savage and Margot Stedman for organizing a awesome baby shower, which gave us a lot of stuff that we use more than I knew that we would. Everybody who was there and gave us gifts and wrote us cards and gave us money, and also for organizing the meal train. It worked because we're still here, because we ate food and it kept us alive. So thank you guys, thank you so much. I wish I could say that 1,000,000 times, but that would the candles would burn out at that point, so I'm not going to do that. So thank you. Also, happy birthday, Evan, yesterday. Yeah. 25 years old today. Sorry, yesterday. 25 years old in one day. So doesn't look a day over 23. Happy birthday. Thanks for being our pastor for the last 6 years. Yeah, thank you. Great. Okay, so I'll jump into it then. It's Advent. Happy Advent. This is if you're a Christian, this is the start of your year. So like the liturgical calendar, it's a cycle. Instead of starting on January 1st with a big 4-digit number at the end, it starts at the first Sunday of Advent, and it anticipates the coming of Christ, the coming of the Messiah. So I didn't hear the word Advent until I was 19 years old. It wasn't until I went to college. I grew up in a really contemporary church that was like liturgy, stay away kind of deal. It's like high liturgy, stay away. But I discovered it at a couple churches in college, and I really immersed myself in them. And I was a theology major, so that helped learn about what Advent is. And I quickly fell so deeply in love with it. It honestly felt like becoming a new Christian again. Everything about high liturgy, including the liturgical calendar. So it's Advent, and several of you probably grew up in some sort of high liturgical church, and maybe you know this, and maybe this is redundant. And if you're like me and you didn't, I just want to say a couple things about what this awesome season is about, and then locate specifically the incarnation as one of the biggest themes of the Advent. So Advent is this Latin word. A lot of you probably know what that Latin word is. Well, it comes from adventus, but that means coming. So the most common song that you guys probably have heard of is O come, Emmanuel. So adventus, Emmanuel, God with us. Emmanuel means God with us. So it focuses on the coming of who would be the Christ, the one that we all need to come. And as we wait for that coming, for these 4 weeks leading up to Christmas Day, leading up to the birth of the Messiah, we have a posture of anticipation. So it's not waiting like twiddling your thumbs kind of deal. It's not sitting back in your chair and saying, well, God will just come grab me when he needs me. It's a very active participation sort of anticipation because we trust the Lord's promise. Amen? Like we trust that the Lord is going to come. We trust that he did come, and we trust that he's going to come again. So the anticipation, the posture looks like hope and peace and joy and love, and it eventually leads us to embodying, joining our lives with Christ himself. And if we were here on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, which we won't be, there's no Christmas Eve service, right? Correct. There would be a big, probably white candle in the middle that's the Christ candle. So those themes are the themes that we focus on, and they prepare our hearts for the coming of the Messiah. And they help us to embody our lives and posture ourselves, move ourselves in the direction of what it looks like to live like Jesus and to live with Jesus right now. So again, biggest thing, Advent means come or coming. So why do we need God to come? So we would probably say we need God to come because we need him to fix our government, or we need him to heal my family, or we need him to end hunger or mental illness or violence. We need him to show us how to do church. What specifically do you want us to do between hours of 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Sundays? We need him to come and clear that up. We need him to, for some of us, the coming is like we need him to come and end this part of history and then start the next one where it's better after this, and then we all get to like go to heaven or whatever. Like we would probably often fill it with all of those things. That's why we need Jesus to come. Perhaps, yes, all of those things can be good and true. I'm not going to get into those things today. But the question I want to be on your mind as we go through this sermon is, what do we really need, and what do we actually anticipate? Would ending hunger fix all of our problems? Would fixing our government fix all of our problems? It would absolutely fix a lot of things, and that would be absolutely swell and amazing if God just walked down and snapped his fingers and did that. But what do we need right here and right now as the moon hasn't turned to blood and we're all sitting on our seats? What do we need? What do we need? So that's the question that we're going to explore today. One answer is partnership. Partnership specifically in the incarnation. So today's big idea is about the surprise of the incarnation. We take that a lot for granted today, the fact that God was human and came to us. We don't really focus on that. The biggest part of Jesus' life that we probably focus on is that part, the cross, right there. Most of our theology, sermons, songs, Bible studies, most of them are about that part right there. That only happened once to him. He was alive a lot longer than that. So the incarnation is kind of, it's the unsung song of the story of Jesus. And that's what Advent is about. And that's why this month out of the year we get to focus on the incarnation, on joining with Christ. So the cross and the resurrection, 100%. They give us a context for living, and also they help us to live like death is not the end. It's not. That's the context that they give us. But the incarnation partners us with God, the God who lives with us, Emmanuel, God with us. So most notably, the incarnation is Jesus showing us what the true human looks like, the second Adam, some people would say. He shows us what it means to be truly human. And no, you're not going to be 100% like Jesus all the time. That's never what he asked of you. But he shows you the path forward. He shows you what it looks like to follow him and daily embody yourself with Christ. He shows you what it means to be hopeful in the face of hopelessness, tragedy, loss, and death. He shows you what it means to be peaceful or a person of peace, not like Zen, not like tranquil, not like, I don't care how anxious you are, you're not going to make me anxious, not that kind of thing. Shalom, that kind of Hebrew concept. Everything is as it should be. It teaches you to be a peacemaker who prioritizes relationship, who bridges the divides, who shakes the dust off your feet and doesn't hold grudges, to leave things better than how you found them, to repair the world. That's the kind of peace that the incarnation teaches us. To be joyful and see light in the darkness, to be light in the darkness, to choose to be grateful even when you have nothing, even when you've lost much, to make others' days better, that kind of joy, persisting, enduring joy, and to be loving. A love that doesn't take, a love that doesn't demand, a love that isn't about us, but a love that only gives, that only serves, that is only others-centered, that kind of love. And ultimately, the incarnation makes being like Christ and being godly possible. Not being Christ and not being God, but becoming like those things, walking in that path to follow who Jesus is. That's what the incarnation makes possible, including picking up your cross and dying daily and living like the resurrection is reality, because it is. That's what the incarnation makes possible. But more than just dying daily, and more than just I'm a wicked, fallen, humble servant who can't even stand on my own two legs, more than just that, obedience also looks like proactively healing and restoring the world as Christ's ambassadors here and now. Not cheap salespeople for the age that is to come. It's the here and now. That's the promise of the incarnation. So, the incarnation is this huge, big room, because it's about life here and now, which your brain is probably going to, if it's like mine, it's going to a million places, and you're like, but what about, and how do I, and this thing, and of course, yeah, I'm not going to fully flesh out this whole thing today. One part of it that I want to focus on, big surprise, is the birth of Jesus. New parent stuff here. Sorry, it's just where my brain's been at. You've probably heard of the term, the scandal of grace, and that can be a lot of things. And one thing that I want to posit today as the scandal of grace is the birth of Jesus as one of the ultimate scandals of grace. Jesus humbled himself so much that he was not only the Son of God, but also became the son of two humans, and also joined in flesh with us. That's how much he humbled himself. The surprise of the incarnation is that God made himself dependent upon his own creation. God made himself dependent upon his own creation. That's the surprise. Like, we take this for granted now. Imagine if you had been waiting for hundreds, thousands of years for the Messiah to come, and the Messiah came in the form of a baby. That would rock your world. Like, that would shock you. That's the surprise of the incarnation. And to really hone in on just the birth today, I had to write this out because I didn't want to just meander around a parenting journey as anybody who's a parent in the room could do for a very long time. I've only been one for 2.5 months. I wrote specific things down that are hopefully very visual and hopefully will help you to understand how surprising and how scandalous God's grace is to us, to give us the gift of the incarnation and partnering and joining with Christ. So, Jesus, he made land to run on and seas to swim in. Yet he spent his earliest days being carried around constantly. And he was praised when he could crawl. And he was lauded when he took his first stumbling steps. He created and exemplified purpose, perfect emotion. Yet he had days he was inconsolable, where he cried when he was left in a room alone. And sometimes he smiled at nothing, you know. If you've seen babies, this happens a lot. Emery's favorite thing is our ceiling fan. Who could have guessed? He knit and crafted every single bone in our bodies, yet when he was born, he had a soft, exposed fontanelle at the top of his skull, leaving his brain vulnerable to severe damage, and he cried and was fussy when the bones of his teeth began to cut through his gums. He intricately lined up our mouths and our throats and our stomachs and our bowels so that now we may eat and drink as we please, yet he had to be breastfed. And even though he was breastfed, he would spit up. And even though this digestive tract worked well, he had diaper rash. He is our refuge. He is our source of life, our provider, and our nourisher. Yet he received his first nourishment from the placenta of a dehydrated, undernourished, Middle Eastern teenage girl who didn't take prenatals. He relied on her womb for protection and safekeeping. He underwent the statistical risk of natural birth, of jaundice, of infection, of SIDS. Now, by saying this, am I saying that God deifies humanity? Or am I saying that we should humanize God? We don't I'm sorry, we're all heretics. I'm not trying to do either one of those. I'm probably doing both. Sorry. But here's my intention. I want us to see that God sees humanity as sacred, and that he values life so much that he would physically share it with us. Every part of it with us. The one final theological weed that we need to emphasize to the sanctity of living to really understand this is the image of God. You can't understand the incarnation you need to understand the incarnation you need to understand both the image of God and the incarnation. We made it. Thanks for bearing with me. Sorry. Point to the image of God. Point to the image of God. People, yeah, very good. Yeah, and you just look around the room and boom, you did it. So you're looking at the backs of heads. That's the back of the head of the image of God right now. So the image of God, this is a super ancient understanding that we also have lost on us all the time. But any ancient emperor who would have called themselves a god would have built a temple. What is God's temple? Our bodies is one answer. If you look at the New Testament, the ancient understanding is not here, not this group. It's the whole world. According to Genesis 1, it's the whole of creation. It's all of the universe. That's God's temple. And after the emperors had built the temple, they would put their idol or they'd put a statue in there. And the understanding is that that idol or that statue, when the emperor wasn't there, was imbued with God's divine presence. Now, where's the temple again is where? Everywhere, everything that you set foot on. So what's the idol? Point to the idol. Okay, am I saying that God idolizes you? Am I saying that? No, go with your gut. Very good. Okay, awesome. Absolutely not. God does not idolize you. The ancient understanding of the term of an idol, not this, you idolize social media, you idolize football, or you idolize food, or whatever it is. That's not the ancient understanding. The ancient understanding is something that has been imbued with God's divine presence, and that's you. You sit there, and the breath that is going in and out of your nose or your mouth, if you have a cold right now, is God's breath. It's God's divine presence that you are imbued with. You are partners with God in his flesh because of the incarnation of Jesus. He values life so much that he chose to physically share it with you. That's what the image of God is all about. So, as far as the biblical story goes, we haven't lost the image of God. You might look at the very beginning and you might say, well, we were made in the image of God, but then the fall, and now we suck, and now we need help, and we're not good for anything. Thank God that he pardons us. That's not how it is at first. And it's not how it is now either. How do we know that we're still made in the image of God? Well, when God comes in a specific form, what form does he come in? A baby, a man, a human. And what are you? A baby or a person or a human. That's what you are right now. You are still God's image. You still, N.T. Wright has this analogy where God uses us to reflect himself to his creation, and his creation is being reflected off of us back to himself. That's a definition of worship. With your very lives, with your very breath, you are worshiping God. The incarnation of Jesus makes the image of God valuable to this day, to right now, to all of your butts sitting in all of those seats. You are still made in the image of God, and you join with Christ with every breath that you take, from your first breath to now, still. We're still joining with Christ in his incarnation. So we are not hopeless. We are not chaotic. We are not irrelevant. We're not just here for ourselves. We partner with God in embodying hope, in embodying peace, in embodying joy, in embodying love, and ultimately embodying Christ himself. We are created to be like Christ. That's what we are created for, is to be like Christ. Now, the initial question I asked you, what do we need? Why do we need God to come? We need God to become like who we are so that we might become like who he is. We need God to become like who we are so that we might become like who he is. Who he is, he's a true human, constantly aware of belovedness, filled to the brim with his own sacrificial love. Who he's transforming us to be? Truly human. He's transforming us to be truly human as he created us to be, like Christ, filled to the brim with his sacrificial love, constantly aware of our belovedness. God's grace is his unwithheld presence. When we feed someone who lives on the street, I got out of order. Sorry. Can you pull up the Matthew verse? Thanks. I'm going to read this, and then what I'm going to say is going to make a lot more sense. Matthew 25, 34 through 40. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or without clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king will answer, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Now I'm going to read that part I was reading earlier. God's grace is his presence unwithheld. When we feed someone who lives on the street or our own child, when we give water to the person standing on the curb with a cardboard sign, or your own family member who can't give water to themselves, when we quickly make friends with a new neighbor from out of town, when we put a change of clothes on our baby or toddler, when we heal and stay with those in hospitals or on hospice, when we go to the prison after work or on the weekend to see a stranger or to see friends. When we do these things, we serve Jesus. When we do these things, we see Jesus. Whatever we did for the least of these, we do for Jesus. The scandal of grace, God became like us. He's still God, and he became like us. When Christ transforms us to see these people and to see God in those people, what it's like is like the first words that you heard this morning that I can't remember, Mary or Becky was reading, the passage from Isaiah that we read in today's Advent reading. When Christ transforms our hearts, it looks like this. "It will not harm or destroy each other on my entire holy mountain, for the land will be as full of the knowledge of the Lord as the sea is filled with water. On that day, the root of Jesse, Jesus, will stand as a banner for the peoples. The nations will look to him for guidance, and his resting place will be glorious." The nations will look to Jesus. They will look to God incarnate in human flesh. They will say, "That is who we need to follow. That is who we need to be like." With every striving breath that we have, by the grace of God himself, through the power and enlivening of the Holy Spirit, that is what we should strive for. And we've got to look around and see other people striving for the same thing, or at least with the need to strive for the same thing. We've got to look around at the people that we love, and at the people that we don't, and at the people that we know, and at the people that we don't. And we've got to remember the incarnation, and we've got to remember that you and that they are still made in the image of God, that they are imbued with God's divine presence, that their life and yours are sacred. A helpful little, phrase that was given to me whenever I was in college by one of my professors. When you're with somebody at any time, or if you just have a break, or if you're frustrated at them, or if you're bored or whatever, you can say to yourself out loud or in your head, "Behold the image of God." Behold the image of God. You can say that right now as you're looking at the backs of the heads of those people sitting in front of you. Behold the image of God. God's plan, part of it, was to become human so that we might see him clearly and we might glorify him with our own lives, our own steps, our own breath. From the day that we were born all the way until today. God's plan is for us to partner with him, to bring glory to his name, to repair this world by joining with him. By joining with him. God doesn't do it all for you. You definitely don't do it all for God. No, we don't do it all for God. God has humbled himself so much in Jesus that he wants us to share, to be a fellow with him in repairing this lost and broken world. We are joined with Christ in God incarnate, in the baby Jesus. I want to pray by singing a tiny bit with you guys of O Come, Emmanuel. And I'll say the words first, and then they'll be written on your hearts, as some scholars would say, as we sing them together. And don't sing too loud, because you're supposed to hear your neighbors singing it too, because then they can write it on your heart as well. O come, Emmanuel, God with us, and ransom captive Israel that lay in lowly exile here until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. The fact of the matter is, Jesus has come, Jesus is here, and Jesus is coming. That's what this Advent season is all about. God incarnate in human flesh. God with us now in the Holy Spirit, and God that you're constantly reminded of whenever you look at the people around you. That's what the incarnation, that's what Advent are all about. So, if you will sing with me. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that lay in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Amen.